Hi everyone! So today, in preparation for the very beginnings of your group projects, which you'll be starting to work on next week, I want to talk to you a little bit about collaborative work. Now I know a lot of you probably have really bad experiences with teamwork, especially in group projects for school, but what I kind of want to communicate today is that it doesn't have to be that way. Oftentimes it's that way because there isn't good, deliberate oversight of what the group actually does. Collaborative work is not just individuals getting together and doing stuff. It is a concerted effort where people work together. And oftentimes, people will not do that if they're not explicitly asked to. So what I really want you to walk away with from this video lecture is the idea that group work is something that is done. It's not something that happens. It's something that you work towards. So just in general, there are two types of groups that you have in your life. You have your primary groups and your secondary groups. Your primary groups, they meet most of your needs. These are your family, your friends, even school. This is your church, perhaps, any after like school or after work activities. These meet your needs. Your secondary groups are work groups. These groups are meant to complete a task or to solve a problem. Um, all groups, whether they're primary or secondary, they have the ability to fulfill basic human need for affiliation, affection, that is in the case of primary groups usually, and control, which is often about it's what happens with your secondary groups, which is oftentimes why issues end up arising, because it is about power, it's about control, it's about who is able and willing to do what. So I want to talk about group life cycles and then also team member life cycles. And this can just give you an idea of how this process might go. It may look familiar to you from your past experiences, but what I really want you to think about is that a group has a life cycle. It has to go through some of those growing pains. So the first step of the life cycle is forming a group. In a lot of ways, this has already been done for you. So, you're really getting into the storming and norming steps in these first beginning weeks of being with your group. But the forming part of the life cycle is where you learn about each other and you determine your purpose. The storming is where you engage in more direct communication. It's where you really get to know each other, and it's where problems may begin to arise. You may start to realize that certain people you don't work well with, or there are going to be issues, personality problems, those kinds of things. Norming is when everyone starts to get on the same level. We start to understand, okay, this is how I need to deal with this specific person. This is how we need to address this kind of problem. And this is where you establish roles in the group. You establish rules, whether unspoken or spoken. Sometimes they need to be said that we do these things and we don't do these things. But these are the norms of how this particular group communicates and works together. You then perform. You do what you're supposed to do. You fulfill your purpose. And then you adjourn. You leave. Now individual members, they fall into a little bit different of a life cycle. Again, potential and new members are kind of in the same step of the life cycle in our instance. But the potential member is curious and interested in the work that the group is doing. Again, you guys are selected into your groups, so you're not really in this stage, but you are a new member. You're joined, but everyone is still an outsider. Then the member becomes a full member by knowing the rules, being someone that people come to, at times leading in their own specific areas. A member can also become divergent. A member can focus on differences. And this may be a good thing. Sometimes it's a bad thing. But this is another step in the life cycle. At times, a divergent member can become marginalized. It can become no longer involved in the group. And then an ex-member is no longer considered a part of the group. So a member can be placed out of a group, or the group can adjourn, and then all members are ex-members. So for me, I have identified 4 roles that I want you all to be playing in this group work for this semester. There's the leader, the spokesperson, the consultant, and the performer. The leader facilitates and delegates. They identify and solve problems, and they're responsible for everything that happens in the group. The spokesperson can oftentimes be the leader, but in our instance, you likely want to separate those roles out because the spokesperson does have a lot of work to do as far as communicating with the personal representative from the company, organization, or agency. This person carries out communication tasks. They edit, they revise, they report to the leader and the project director, which is me in this instance, and they record everything. So if there's a conversation about addressing an issue, if there's a brainstorming session, if there's a revision session, the spokesperson makes sure to keep a record of that. The consultant and the performer, they work together more often than not. The consultant is the subject matter expert. This is your researcher, your data analysis guy. This person works collaboratively with the performers, who are the people who carry out tasks as delegated by the leader or the consultant. This is oftentimes a more technical or task-oriented person. Oftentimes, if you are more interested in accounting or the mathematical parts of econ, or perhaps you have leaning towards engineering, technology, that kind of stuff, this is likely going to be the place that you excel at, where you're doing the things, you are carrying out the tasks that the team needs to be done. And you work collaboratively with subject matter experts, the consultants, to make sure that you're doing the right things. You're following protocol. You're following through on the subject matter. Now, within those roles, a team member can also fill a positive role, and the next slide I will get to negative roles. So the positive roles are the questioners and the harmonizers, and I ask you to identify potentially as one of these, a questioner or a harmonizer. This can be broken down to even further roles, even more specific roles. You can have an initiator coordinator, excuse me. This is a person who suggests new ideas, new ways of looking at a problem. This is your inventive person, your innovative person. You can have an elaborator who builds on the ideas of others and provides examples. You can have a coordinator who brings things together. This is the synthesizer. You can have an evaluator critic who evaluates the ideas and provides constructive criticism. And you can also have a recorder. This person can be a questioner, can be a harmonizer. This person can play, honestly, any one of these roles, the coordinator, the elaborator. But this person is recording everything. And again, often the spokesperson. Negative roles. You can have a dominator, someone who dominates the discussion, doesn't allow other people to take their turns. You can have someone who's seeking recognition for their own accomplishments, someone who wants to relate all the discussions to their own agenda. You can have a blocker. So this is your kind of person who blocks consensus, maybe argumentative at times. And then you have a joker or clown who can distract group members with humor. And at times, these are negative roles, but at times these roles are also good things. Again, a blocker can be someone who is a questioner and can say, hold on, we need to rethink this. Sometimes you need, a little bit of humor to lighten up the morale of a group. The recognition seeker, the dominator, or the special interest pleader, they may be seeking, seeking attention in specific ways, but maybe that attention needs to be directed towards the specific topics that they want to direct it towards. So these negative roles really are about the moderation at which you act in these ways. So how do you resolve problems? If ever you come up with a problem in your group, I want you to follow these steps in this order too. I want you to first define the problem. What happened? Be able to describe it first without laying any blame. Second, you want to analyze the problem. Not who did what, but why it happened. is important. You then want to establish criteria. So what do we need to solve this problem? You want to consider possible solutions. Again, we're starting to look like the steps of communication, right? We're identifying a situation, possible solutions. So what are the ways we can solve the problem? We want to decide on a solution. So what's the route we want to take with this particular thing? We want to implement it. So what do we need to do to actually make this happen? And then we want to follow up. This is an incredibly important step. How has everyone responded to the problem? So leaders, you're going to be doing some of this. It's possible in your own groups. You're going to be resolving problems by establishing this kind of protocol. Planning and holding meetings is going to be a big part of your work in coming together as a team. You want to make sure that you figure out if you're going to hold meetings in person or digitally. The very first thing you want to consider, though, is what the purpose of the meeting is. So, do you want to put together a workflow this meeting? Do you want to make sure you draft a document by the end of this meeting? So, scheduling your meetings alongside the kind of steps that I've laid out for you in the assignment sheet is going to be a good idea, so that you have an understandable scope for what you're trying to do in a meeting. You want to schedule the meeting. I would highly suggest using scheduling tools like Doodle or just making sure that you have a good idea of what everybody's schedule looks like. So for example, if all of your team has full-time jobs on Tuesdays, you don't want to schedule meetings, on Tuesdays at noon. Use calendar invites, all that. Before the meeting, create an agenda of topics to be addressed. So first, we're going to talk about roles. Second, responsibilities. Third, future meeting dates. Confirm with the group. This is usually the leader, perhaps the spokesperson, but make sure the day before or the morning before, just send out an email to remind everybody, we have a meeting today, don't miss it. All of you should come to the meeting prepared, ready to work, discuss, and offer up what you've created since the last meeting. And then you always want to end with an action item list. What do we need to do to accomplish by the next meeting? A general rule for teamwork, guys, is to check in often. Be communicating with your team. If you can do that, likelihood is the rest is going to fall into place. But make sure you're checking in, fulfilling your responsibilities, responding as quickly as you possibly can, providing feedback, letting people know what your limitations are too. In other words, be honest, kind, and invested, just like I ask you to be with my class. This is how you need to approach your teams.